Okay. I'm just concerned about how it's breaking down to the local level, because I still have many principals that are speaking to me about the need for technology upgrades and actually wiring upgrades, because they can't even get the building up to spec because the buildings are so old. So I'm curious, and if you could send me some details on how that's being broken down so we can inform our principals what they need to do to get into consideration for that available money.
Senator, we'll send that to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my last question is just on a kind of a follow-up to that. You talked about your need, your lack of ability to provide technical support, and that you're understaffed in the ability to do technical support and information. Are you working with the various municipalities to empower them to pick up where you're not able to do, as far as making sure that the technical support and information is getting out to all of the school districts?
Well, relative to the smart bond, yes, our staffs, there are 17 centers that are technology-based centers that work with our BOCES programs, and they are working on what are smart expenditures of the smart bond money. And they've worked with individual school districts and have given them ideas on what should be the best investments for them that would be long-term. And so that is occurring on a regular basis. And I was with them this week on Monday. They had a meeting here in Albany, and we had a long conversation about providing those resources and the expertise that they have in technology planning with the districts across the state.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your answers. I hope that we can do more to ensure that those school districts and those principals that don't have good grant writers can at least get the information in a simple enough form that they can get caught up to, because if not, there'll always be a disparity that can't be bridged. Do I need to repeat that since the phone was ringing? All right, thank you, thank you.
Phones have incredible music on them now.
Yeah, they do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Assemblyman Brindisi.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. I want to ask you briefly about my two favorite acronyms, CTE and ELLs. First, regarding CTEs, I want to thank you for your work on expanding pathways to graduation. The concern I have is you've made a request now for a few years to increase the BOCES aid as well as the special services aid, which has not been met by the legislature. And I'm concerned about how the 4+1 pathways is going to move forward if we don't follow through on that request. How do you see that moving forward?
Well, I think that there's no question we can expand the pathways, which is one of the actions that must be taken, but then we have to make sure that students have equitable access across the state to those pathways or to technical career programs that are relevant for their particular community. The BOCES programs have been the center point of much of that. Many of our districts outside of BOCES also present and provide CTE programming in their high schools. And the proposal that we have specifically relates to the instructional salaries. It's a big issue for us to be able to get the quality of individuals to come in and work in our programs as the teacher if, in fact, out in the real world, they can make more money. And so I think that there is a trade-off, but we have not had increases in that funding, and it's absolutely critical to do it. CTE programming is very, very strongly connected to the lifeblood of an expansion of an economy in a state. And if you talk to any business that's considering going into a state, or if you talk to businesses that are here that are considering expanding, their one question is, do I have the workforce to hire that is ready to be able to move to this? And I think it's critical for us to keep in mind that investments in CTE are those investments that will long-term benefit us across the board.
That's music to my ears. And regarding ELLs, can you expand a little bit on your proposal for $75 million for ELLs? I don't think there's anything in the executive proposal related to ELLs. Can you tell me a little bit more how that money would be targeted, which districts would be receiving that money, and what it's for?
Right. Well, we have increased by 20% the population of our ELL students in the state of New York. Right now, that is about 8% of our population. And so those students have special needs and need to have focused instruction to support them. And there's a couple things that we've talked about, and it's in our proposal, is expanding the availability of assessments in the native language, which is an important expenditure. And we've also talked about professional development for teachers and support for districts as we implement the 154. And I think that what we're talking about really is making sure that those students who are in our country, who want to take advantage of educational programming that we have the availability of that, and are not hindered by the fact that they're in the process of learning another language. I think it's also important for us to recognize in this global world how important multiple languages are. And to make sure, and we're moving towards a specialized diploma specifically related to languages other than English, and we think that that will help to support and focus on those students that have been able to learn more than one language or bring their native language, learn English, and in many cases learn another language.
Is that money targeted towards certain districts that have higher percentages of
No,
ELLs?
it's where the students are.
Okay.
Okay.
And then finally, just one final question. Regarding the facilities planning office, we're hearing a lot from districts about a backlog from SED getting plans approved. And I think we did appropriate some money last year in the budget to hire some more engineers and architects, and I just want to see what the status of that is.
Yep.
Are you moving forward with hiring more employees there?
Okay, so thank you very much for the expenditure that you gave to us of $800,000. We're in the process, we've hired firms that can take some of that backlog and help us to move through it quickly, and I can give you an update of that. Regarding private engineering firms to review and approve backlog school projects, 3 contracts are approved. A total of 25 projects are currently being reviewed by those firms, and the remaining contracts are expected to be approved in the near future, and the projects will be shipped to them immediately. Then in contracting with multiple engineering firms that specialize in energy review, because as we do this, the energy review projects come to us and we have to approve those as well. 3 contracts are approved. A total of 10 projects are currently being reviewed by those 2 firms, 5 additional projects. We have a backlog, there's no question, and we're requesting in support. We've reduced the backlog by 8 weeks so far, and we still have a lot of work to do, but we're using that funding and appreciate the fact that it continues into next year's budget.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. We've been joined by Assemblyman O'Donnell. Senator.
Thank you very much. Next would be Senator Velmanette Montgomery.
Thank you. Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioner. I want to start by thanking you and the Regents for adopting the program that you have requested funding for, which seeks to improve the outcomes for boys and young men of color. I know that there was a lot of work that was done on that, and you also listened particularly to young people, which was very different, and I appreciate the work that you and Dr. Young have done on that. I just want to raise a couple of issues with you. I'm looking at page 22 of your report, and I'm very pleased that you have included a component of the funding for that program, my Brother's Keeper program, I like to call it, the New York State version, of developing exemplary school models, because that seems to be where we never get around to replicating what actually works. And so I just want to raise something with you with regard to what works. There are several high schools in my district that are either CTE or they are high-end academic performing schools, high graduation rates, technology, and I'll name a few of them. Brooklyn Tech is one of them. That's sort of one of the best schools in the state, I would imagine, possibly in the nation. The Harbor School, I want to mention, is another school that really works. P-Tech, obviously, is one that works. The Bard High School is one that works. And so my question to you is, and several of the principals at those schools and others that I've spoken to have talked about the need for preparing students before they get to the high school in order to assist. So it sort of works into your notion of creating a pipeline, cradle to grave. Not cradle to grave, cradle to college, excuse me. I'm thinking grave, I don't know why. So I want to ask you, where are you and the Regents with looking at the possibility of increasing the middle school aspect of our system that would allow those high schools to be more directly connected to a middle school as a feeder school? I know the Harbor School in particular has requested that. They are in the process of trying to plan for one right now. Brooklyn Tech has talked about it, P-Tech. So I'm really very, very interested in seeing to what extent you can help to foster that movement. And in relationship to that, those high-end schools have a very, very specific need for teachers to be able to work with young people, teachers who are certified perhaps in areas that we don't currently have certification for. So I'm really very interested in where you are with that process and how soon we can expect that there'll be some way to address that. And the last part of my questioning is around the early college programs. I would really like to have an update on where the programs that you already have, where you are with that, and I didn't see where that fits in with your budget request. So, and that is another program that I'm aware of that absolutely works to the great benefit of a large number of students, especially in those places where students don't have a large selection of advanced college placement and so forth. They can begin to be integrated as college students earlier and perhaps save a lot in terms of having a college experience even before they graduate from high school. And that has really made a tremendous difference to a large number of young people in my district in particular. So those are two parts of my question.
Okay, the first question related to middle schools and,
Yes.
And the support for the development earlier.
Yes.
In either an interest or skill level.
Yes.
To move into the high schools. I think it's an absolutely critical thing. I was with a group of superintendents this week, and they brought up the issue and have asked us to look specifically at what we currently have in regulation related to middle school curriculum, and that we allow for shifts in that so that we can have districts who want to develop specific curriculums for middle school and put career and technical and or
Yes.
other supports for higher academics into the middle school grades. So that is something we will be working on. Right now, it's not something that we do have some districts that have done it successfully, and again, using those models that are positive, that
Yes.
have been supportive. I think it's really smart of us to use those as a way of kind of sharing the ideas and not have to do that again. Regarding the
Thank you.
certification, Chancellor Farina and I have talked about the specific issues of getting teachers who are certified in areas where we
Yes.
don't have teachers that have that certification,
Yes.
and what we can do to to be more open, particularly in areas of career and technical where an individual maybe have developed the skills and be excellent at the work that they're doing, and we want them to work with our students, but they don't have some of the other prerequisites that are normally part of certification.
Exactly.
So we're looking at that closely, and we're going to be looking at certification across the board. As you know, we have a number of places across the state where there are openings for teachers, and we need to make sure that we have quality teachers in our classrooms. We also need to make sure that if we have people from the community who can come in and share their expertise, we give them the opportunity to do that in more creative ways and with more flexibility. So that is also one thing that we're looking at. And the early college high schools, the department has, we currently are providing $7 million or $3.5 million over the current funding levels. We'd like to have an increase in our early college high schools, and I can tell you from experience that early college high schools are a way of leveling the playing field for all students.
Yes.
It's the availability of coursework in both middle school and in high school that allows students to matriculate some kind of credit. And whether the student is terribly successful in the program or not, the fact that they have taken a course that puts them in their perception that they can do higher level coursework is extremely important. And I once read a study, 26% of the students in high school who take and or complete a college level course have a 26% higher rate of graduating in 4 years. 4 years now is not the norm. And to have students graduating in 4 years because we've given them a step up, I think is extremely important.
Yes.
So we can get you more information on the early college high school, but we have requested both for early college high schools and for PTech an expansion. I think that PTech is a model that has received much acclaim, and we are seeing students that would not be a traditional, what we would call a traditional go-to-college kind of student, be very successful and move into jobs in IBM and other great partners who are supporting those programs with us.
Yes.
So we're very excited about those.
Thank you. And lastly, I'm very happy that you're focusing on CTE. And I just want to tell you that at the Harbor School, to see students engaged, and these are students who otherwise would not have access to this kind of education, is extremely exciting. And I think that's what we hope to have more of. And just so that you know that many of those students have been able to graduate from the Harbor School, and for the first time, students from my district in Brooklyn were eligible to go into the Maritime College. So it's now become a feeder into that college, first time in the history. So I'm very excited about it and look forward to working with you and the Regents to do whatever we can to make sure that this kind of education is available to more students.
That kind of education should be available across the state of New York everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Well, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Malia Takas.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Good morning.
Actually, a lot of my questions were already answered, so I will just ask
Thank you very much.
a few remaining. I'm very pleased that the administration has put together this commission to evaluate the Common Core. It seems for a while there was a reluctancy to admit there were significant flaws in it. And with regards to, the teacher evaluation is an important component. The reduction of testing is a very important component. One of the components is the developmentally disabled and making sure that testing and curriculum is appropriate for their learning abilities. And so that is, I think, one of the biggest concerns that I have as we're proceeding. And I wanted to know, with regards to that, what are you looking specifically to, how are you going to evaluate that? and move forward? And secondly, what efforts are being made to engage parents and school communities as we continue in this process? I know you've had 9 public hearings, but from now on, as you're continuing to work on the changes.
Well, the last 7 months, I've spent a lot of time, 20,000 miles in my car, traveling around the state and meeting with various groups. I think that much of what we need to do is make sure that people understand and are part of this process. And so in terms of the work that needs to be done, if you look at the surveys, it's very clear that parents learn about what's happening in the schools and what's happening in education from their child's teacher. They trust the teacher. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have their child with them in the classroom. And so when the teacher speaks, then that's what they believe. And principals are equally important in communications. As our superintendents, they are part of the local community. And I think it's very important that that State Ed Department get the information out on the changes that have been made that are responsive to the comments and the concerns that people have had. Everyone will not be pleased. Everyone would like it done yesterday. And we're moving in a very appropriate way, I believe, to make the changes necessary. I just want to remind you that some of the concerns that people had was that we moved too fast. And we don't want to repeat those concerns in how we react now to make the changes that need to be made. So the work that we're doing now is specifically getting information out through the district superintendents at the BOCES and the Big 5 school districts, and spreading that out to principals and superintendents across the state. We have approximately 700 districts in the state of New York, and the communication has to occur at that local level. We're really supporting them to do that. I think that's going to be a key for us in getting this word and the information out on the changes that are occurring and the timeline that's occurring and why it should be done in a way that allows us to gather and get input as we go.
And whether it be through the local school districts or the principals, we have to make sure also that the PTAs and the community education councils are included. If my office can be helpful in my district, please let me know. With regards to heroin curriculum, 2014 the legislature passed legislation requiring that opioid and heroin education was included in the drug abuse and updated every 3 years. Can you give us just an update on where you're at with that and what progress has been made?
Well, we've worked with other state agencies on developing that curriculum and moving that out, but I'll provide that update for you when I have more specifics.
Okay. I think vocational training is extremely important, and I think when we have this debate oftentimes in Albany about the minimum wage, I think one of the things that we don't often talk about is trying to get people off minimum wage. And I think that vocational training offers that career path. And I think it's so important that we invest in vocational training, and I like the work that's being done with the pathway. Is there adequate access, in your opinion, to vocational training throughout the state?
Well, I would agree with you that it's extremely important. It is not equal across the state, and so you have some areas that have access to multiple programs for their students, and you have other areas that don't. And I think we just heard from Brooklyn about some great programs that are very successful there. Every place doesn't have those programs. And so I think what we have to do is be very purposeful in making sure that when we expand and provide resources, that it is done across the state. Now, the BOCES proposal for CTE, in our BOCES, that's one of the core functions that they provide for districts in their area. But I believe that districts also can provide some programming that would be very relevant and connect kids to a career in their community. You're seeing that now. There's been a proposal, and you may be hearing from the superintendent from Buffalo, Dr. Kreiner Cash, but he has a proposal in to turn some of his high schools that have been persistently struggling into schools that are connected to an employer in that very area where the school is located, and really working those programs so that a student can leave high school and be ready to move immediately into a job with that company. And I think that kind of connection is extremely important.
Would you be able to provide my office with some of the best programs you think that are currently underway in the state, just so I can get an idea of what options there are?
Yes.
Thank you. And last question, this is something that's sort of just, personal to me. I was doing a voter registration drive, and I had someone who was 18 years old who handed me the registration, and he had printed where it said signature. And so I said, oh, no, this is not what you're supposed to print. You have to do your signature. He says, I don't have a signature. He's like, I've never learned penmanship in school. We never learned cursive writing in school. I find that to be unbelievable and very disappointing that our young people are graduating not having a signature. I mean, how are they going to, they're going to open a bank account, they're going to sign checks, they're going to legal documents throughout the career and life, and to not have a signature is not only something I think it's not only sad just in general as a perspective, but it's something that is of a security concern, that anyone can just print their name. There's no identity. What are your thoughts on this, and can we change this to make sure that it's part of the curriculum in the state of New York?
Well, first of all, I think we have to keep in perspective that that may in fact not have been the focus of what the curriculum was in wherever that student went to school, and maybe they didn't talk about it, but I have been in schools across the state, and everywhere I go there is writing work up on the walls from the students, and they're writing the work in cursive. Now, that is part of a curriculum that's much more expansive, and if we talk about the pedagogy of higher standards, we are including writing as a key component to that. So I would suggest to you that writing is important, and I can't explain how that student would respond the way they did. There are some programs in the past that I have seen across the country that have left writing as you know it out and put more emphasis on using technology for writing and rewriting, etc. And if that's the case, then I think we have to make sure that there is a balance across all curriculum areas.
Yeah, I would appreciate if you looked further into this, because I had a conversation with teachers in my district following, and they just said it's just not required anymore. And so I'm not sure if that's a local decision. I assume it would be a state ed decision because it's part of the curriculum. But if you could look into that
Sure.
and get back to me, I'd appreciate it.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Senator Liz Krueger.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Delighted you have joined us in New York State. And as I mentioned to you when we met, I'm very pleased to see that you are moving forward with your waiver to the federal government allowing for portfolio high school completion. Am I correct? That's still part of the plan?
Well, we've requested it. Under the new law, we think we may have some flexibility, and we're hoping that we can do that and develop some different types of assessments. So yes, we are. I can't tell you what the timeline will be, but we're looking at it.
And on timeline, I know at least one other person asked about the technology bond money.
Yes.
Can you say how many school districts have already applied for that money?
Sure, we have that.
And while you're looking also, what you think the approximate timeline is for approval once a district does apply for the money?
So, right now, we have $48 million that has been proposed so far. I don't have the actual number of schools that have submitted and been approved and included in that $48 million, but we'll get those specifics to you. But it's under the 6 categories. I have the amounts under each category. $20 million for classroom connectivity, $10,000, which is a project for a local library for community connectivity. Classroom technology is $19.6 million. Pre-K classrooms is $2.1 million. High-tech security is $5.7 million, and the replacement of transportable classroom units is 0 so far, so that has not been a focus of the funding.
And based on your answers, I now think you're saying that a district doesn't apply for the lump sum as one proposal. The individual schools or individual projects must make an application?
I believe that the districts, and we'll get the specifics to you, the districts apply, and they apply by school, and the particular category of funding that they're accessing is part of their request.
So if I was a large school district, say New York City, where I'm from, the assumption is they would be filing for their entire amount, but it would be broken down item by item for different schools, different projects?
Yes.
And then you would approve or disapprove line item, not yes to New York City School District or Yonkers School District, or no?
Yeah, so they would submit. If it was in the categories that I just pointed out, then it would move forward. There's a governance council that has to approve, which includes SUNY, the State Ed Department, and the Department of Budget. And so those three have to approve as it moves forward to get the funding allocated.
How frequently do they meet?
We haven't had a meeting yet, so this is the funding that we have here are these requests with those various dollar amounts.
And are there 3 votes taken then, or is it a consensus? Can any one of those 3 veto a project?